This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
We're coming to you on a big day, Real Talkers. This is, it's a day that feels, for sports fans, to be one of great magnitude, and I don't even think you need to be a huge hockey fan to know that when Canada and the United States square off, it's Thursday, by the way, when they square off in Boston for the first ever Four Nations face-off gold medal. It feels like there's more at stake, more than there has been in past with this great rivalry. In just a second, we're going to go to Boston to check in with a good friend of this show. He's going to be in attendance tonight, rocking a jersey emblazoned with that maple leaf, but it'll look a little bit different than most other Team Canada jerseys. We're going to find out why Chris LaBossiere is there in just a second. Our Real Talk Roundtable today, we're proud to shine the spotlight on women's health, on the research, on the advancements, on maybe the spotlight that's not been shone there in past and what the bright future looks like, how researchers are taking us there. It promises to be an informative one. Now, courtesy of our presenting sponsor, We Know Training, today's episode and the highlight presentation of this episode is being dedicated to the Juno Beach Center. It's Canada's Second World War Museum and Cultural Center located in Normandy, France. The center pays homage to the 45,000 Canadians who lost their lives during the war, of which 5,500 were killed during the Battle of Normandy, 381 on D-Day. The Juno Beach Center was opened about 22 years ago by veterans and volunteers with a vision to create a permanent memorial to all Canadians who served during the Second World War. The center's mandate is to preserve this legacy for future generations through education and remembrance, but they're encountering some challenges. And we're going to get into that today and tell you how you can help. If you're interested in learning more right now, you can visit them online at junobeach.org. We'll have the link to that in the show notes on the podcast and on YouTube. Folks, it is game day. It's Canada versus the United States, and this one, as mentioned, feels bigger than hockey. Sure, we're tuning in for the speed and the skill and the bad blood and that classic Canada-U.S.A. rivalry, but this matchup hits differently in 2025. Donald Trump is out there floating tariffs that could hit Canadian industries hard. He's calling our Prime Minister the Governor of Canada. He's referring to our proud and sovereign nation as the 51st U.S. state. We've got American sitting members of Congress chuckling at that, tossing that idea around. Well, tonight, it's Canada versus the Americans on their home ice in Boston. And nothing says we are not the 51st anything like taking it to the Americans in their own barn. Chris LaBossiere knows a thing or two about national pride. He's the president of the Juno Beach Center, carrying the torch for Canadian history. And tonight, he's in enemy territory for this showdown, checking in from Boston. Welcome to the show. It's good to see you.
Ryan, good morning. Thanks. It's great to be on your show finally as a guest. I'm excited for today. Thank you for the read about our great museum in France, and really looking forward to the chat.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about the work that the Juno Beach Center is doing, and as mentioned, kind of the threat to its future. And I know that Canadians will have that message resonate with them loud and clear. But where's your head at right now? Do you agree with me? We've had some classic Canada-U.S. showdowns. Obviously, 2010. 2002. Way back in the day, the Americans have had their own wins, the Miracle on Ice, and they took it to us in the round robin part of this tournament. The added layer to this, how's it landing with you?
Well, it's a really interesting symbol of a lot of things. I guess I would say that in all those instances, the past, we've fought against the Americans on the ice, and we've respected each other. But this is definitely a different feeling. It definitely feels like we need to do our job today to remind Americans and Canadians why we're friends, what we fight for collectively, and what we fought for collectively in the past. It is a very big day. It feels very symbolic. It feels very important that we have this conversation.
You're wearing a sweater that's a little bit different than most other Canadian hockey jerseys that'll be on display tonight in Boston. Tell us about this Juno Beach jersey.
I'm proudly now the new president of the board of directors of the Juno Beach Center. We have been a museum, as you mentioned, built in France, an interpretive museum for now over 20 years, founded by a great Canadian veteran, Garth Webb, privately owned institution. A lot of people don't necessarily understand that about the Juno Beach Center. We do not receive any continuous funding whatsoever from actually any funding source. We have to fight for all of our funding, and we have to fight to keep the vision of our museum alive. And that vision was founded by a Canadian soldier, Garth Webb from the 14th Field Artillery Regiment. Him and his buddies went over into France on the 50th anniversary of D-Day, and they stood on that ground and they realized that there needs to be a way for Canadians to remember forever, and particularly young Canadians, to learn and understand and remind ourselves about what our soldiers fought for that day alongside the Americans on that beach. As we all know, it's obviously it's a well-told story. The Juno Beach Center itself has been in a fight, it feels like, for almost 5 straight years now, with COVID hitting largely a building that receives the vast majority of its funding from ticket revenue and from guests of the museum. To close for 2 years during COVID, or for a good part of that impacted our business and definitely questioned the future of our museum. And then many Canadians know 65,000 Canadians wrote letters to their government, to their MPs, to their MLAs, and to their local leaders 2 years ago, when there was a condo development that was going to be built on the sand and on the beach where our men landed. And that drained a lot of resources out of our organization, almost $800,000 just in legal fights and legal fees, fighting with the local developer on that case. Luckily, everyone knew it was a bad idea. The sentiment of the French people, the local French people, the regional and the national government of France was there behind us immediately. They helped provide a solution to take that condo development offline. And eventually the Canadian government showed up, and they have been proud flag bearers of our center and our museum. But again, they eventually showed up and was able to help us fight off that condo development. But not a penny of that went to the Juno Beach Center. I want to be clear, that was to remove that problem. The land was granted into our long-term lease, a 100-year lease that we have with the French government. But now we need to do something with that piece of land. And my principal wish is to do anything possible to make that dream come alive. There's going to be a memorial built, an interpretive park, and a memorial built outside our museum. For the first time, we'll have a large memorial that honors the 380 that died on D-Day that day, Canadians, soldiers that sacrificed their lives for our freedom today, for our sovereignty today. So I'm very excited about that, and obviously I just asking Canadians to consider us and consider remembering, and particularly today, remembering about why we fight and why it matters.
What sort of reaction do you get from your fellow Canadians and from our American neighbors when they see that Juno Beach Center jersey, or when you talk to them about the Juno Beach Center? Like, what are you expecting on the concourse tonight in Boston?
We have such a great friendship with Americans. Boston is the home of American liberty and freedom. I mean, it's in the DNA of every American. I believe that in my heart. I believe that Canadians and Americans have always had our differences. I laugh at the stories that I read and heard about in the wartime, at my grandfather, my grandmother, and who was a proud Brit, a war bride. Skeptical of the Americans, but Churchill's was noted to have said, the Americans are always going to do the right thing after they eventually exhaust all other options. And I just want to go in that barn tonight and remind Americans that we are great friends and we fight and care about the same things. And, the concepts of freedom, and particularly the concepts of sovereignty and a nation's sovereignty. Some of the leadership of this country are choosing to pick sides in these very, very real wars that are taking the lives of people on foreign soil. And I think that needs to be deeply, deeply questioned by Americans. I trust that they will, and I trust that Canadians will be there and remain friends and trading partners with them along the way. Tonight's hockey game will be fun to watch. The weight on the shoulders of those young men tonight is formidable, and I just want to say that obviously there is a bigger story going on here, but I hope we can have fun at the hockey game tonight.
Yeah,
and of course, I hope we can win.
Yeah. Do you have a prediction, by the way? I hate to put you on the spot, but
No, I'm not going to predict the outcome of the game. And my wife and I want to get in there, have fun, get out safe, and enjoy ourselves, and help tell a little bit of a story throughout Boston as we walk around today about why we need to stay friends
I
and
love
what
it.
we're fighting for.
I feel like you're down there acting as an ambassador. That's what it feels like, and I know that obviously that logo that's emblazoned on your chest, the Juno Beach Center, just adds another layer to this. It's why I'm so grateful that you agreed to make time to talk to us. It's just a whole added context on why I think people are feeling. And there's people in our live chat right now that are saying, they're going to be watching the game. They're not even huge hockey fans, Chris, but it just feels like this is this national moment, and maybe we're building it into something bigger than it is. But sport has often served as that, right? Like nations back and forth and warring it out. Before I thank you for your time, and I know you got stuff to get to, but I just want to ask people, and they can learn more about this capital campaign at junobeach.org, and we'll link to it. But for folks that aren't familiar with the background, like, you got a lot on your plate, man. You're taking on this role as president of the Juno Beach Center because I know for you this is personal. Why do you care so much about this?
Well, that's a really hard thing to say without getting very deeply emotional. But for most people who know me personally, my grandfather was a very important part of my life. He was there when we needed him to be there, and he's always been a absolutely amazing community member, a stalwart member of our family, probably the steadiest, him and my grandma, the steadiest influences on our lives. He fought in the war. He was highly decorated in the war. He came back and reached several what would be considered normal blue collar, jobs in Grand Prairie. He was a security guard at the college, a security guard at the landfill. He was a handyman, but he was just such a powerful member of his community. And I think about that. And then once we learned about his war service, he forbid us to speak of it. He received a number of medals. He received the Bronze Cross from the government of the Netherlands for valor in Holland. I think about that, and I think he was in a Bren carrier, which is a three-person vehicle with an open top in the liberation of Holton. So about 3-4 weeks from today, 80 years ago, he was in that carrier, and they were ambushed by the Nazis. Sergeant Ernest England, he's buried in row 1, grave 1, plot 1 of the Holton Cemetery in Canada. He was immediately killed, decapitated. The other gentleman, Trooper Albert Bashensky, was in the vehicle next to him. He eventually died. My grandfather was able to get him out. Luckily, of course, my grandfather survived. And I just kind of think about the sacrifice of those two men a lot. And we'll be there in the Netherlands, and we'll see them in Holton when we're there this spring. And we have to remember why they fought and why these young men gave their lives. And I think that's important. And I don't think we should ever forget it. And we can talk about this being a hockey game, but we can also talk about what our best friend's doing right now. And I think we need to talk to the American people, not the American government. And I think our government and everyone in Canada needs to come together. We need perfect unity right now more than ever because of the sacrifices of the men that walked up our beach, there's 450,000 Canadians that served in World War II. Almost all of them were volunteers. 45,000 of them perished. That's what our museum represents, their memory, their honor, why they fought. Freedom, sovereignty, democracy, the basic principles of society that frankly, we must fight for. The Ukrainians have been fighting for. And so I think there is a bigger backdrop here that matters. And if it is a hockey game where we can walk around and try to tell Americans and Canadians to remind them why this matters, then that's why I'm here. And I'm very proud to do it. The Juno Beach Center will survive. The condo fight was a big, tough fight for us, but we are planning some fairly large things here. We've got a relaunch of our campaign on June 6th, D-Day, that I'm really excited to tell people about eventually, and we're finding support from Canadians, and that's what we can ask for. That's why we do it, and I just remind Canadians to remind themselves why it matters.
Incredible stuff, man, and thank you for taking us into the personal side of it. It's powerful stuff. Let me ask you in closing, what are you going to do if people sitting around you in the stands at TD Garden start booing anthems?
I'm going to stand and cheer for both anthems. I've thought about that a lot. I'm be proud to do that. I do that to remember the Canadians and the Americans that fought with us and alongside us. If Mr. Trump, President Trump, was in the room, I I would be turning my back. Luckily, I find out he won't be here tonight. But yeah, I'm going to be honest about that. I think that that he doesn't represent, in my opinion, America and Americans, and he might represent some of them, but America as a whole will come together and do the right thing. This city proved it. This country has proved it again and again and again. They fight tyranny. They fight wrongdoings and the centralization of power and taking power away from people. And, that's not what America stands for. And I'm really confident we'll have a lot of fun in there tonight.
That invited Trudeau to the White House.
We have an update on something from Donald Trump.
So
Chris, this is just what's going on.
Just this morning, breaking, Donald Trump has invited Trudeau to the White House to watch the game via Truth Social. You can read this.
Oh, wow.
I'll be calling our great American hockey team this morning to spur them on towards victory tonight against Canada, which with far lower taxes and much stronger security will someday, maybe soon, become our cherished and very important 51st state.
Geez.
I will be speaking with the governors tonight in D.C. and sadly, therefore, will be unable to attend. But we will be watching, and if Governor Trudeau would like to join us, he would be most welcome. Good luck to everybody. Have a great game tonight. So exciting. President Donald J. Trump.
It feels like a parody, Chris. I'm just seeing that for the first time, Johnny. Thanks for putting that in front of. I was watching your face while Johnny was reading it. How does that land with you? You look angry.
There's been a litany of this, and I think there's a lot of underlying reasons, for how we've put ourselves in this situation. I think the message there needs to be that Prime Minister Trudeau, Mr. Poilievre, obviously Mr. Carney, Mr. Singh, our provincial leaders, all of our premiers need to come together and show an alliance that Canada and all Canadians will not tolerate. Under any circumstances, the lack of our sovereignty, 100% full stop. And so I think that's a challenge to our government and to our leaders. I'm sure we will respond appropriately. He's not a serious man. He's a kleptocrat. He's fleecing Americans as much as he is the rest of the world, in my honest opinion. But this isn't really about American politics, other than we need to remind Americans that we're probably their best friend in the world.
Beautifully said. Chris LaBossiere is the president of the Juno Beach Center. Also happens to be the CEO of We Know Training and an amazing friend to Real Talk. He is in Boston ahead of tonight's showdown. I think that I just have a sense, and I'm not going to say anything that will jinx it, but I think you're going to see a special performance from Sidney Crosby, and I think you're going to see something really special from Connor McDavid. I just feel it.
Wouldn't those two guys be great honorary co-chairs of our renewed campaign to create financial sustainability for the Juno Beach Center? So we're going to keep hunting for those folks. Canada's coming together behind us, but if we get a win tonight, that'd be a great start. And I have a lot of confidence we will.
I love it. Go get him, Chris. Thanks for checking in. That's Chris LaBossiere, president of the Juno Beach Center. You can check it out online at junobeach.org. I can't believe that post from the president. He's just
I had to come in because
this is what they call bulletin board material.
Right? I saw it pop up. I get notifications now on anything Trump does, and I just saw it. I was like, he's inviting Trudeau to the White House to watch the game.
What are you doing to protect your mental health now that you have activated notifications every time Donald Trump says something?
Well, yeah, it's bad. But that's the world we're living in. For 4 years, I got to deal with it.
You're 100% right. It's the reality right now. And a shout out to everyone. I'm curious if you want to throw it into our live chat, powered by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider, where you think this game is going to go tonight. I know some people, you feel you don't like putting scores out there. You don't like making predictions. It makes you uncomfortable.
No.
Makes me uncomfortable too. But John, are you willing to put your neck out there and go on the record with a prediction for tonight's big game?
Yeah, I think Canada is the healthier team.
Yeah.
I think in terms of injuries, I think Canada in most tournaments we've seen before, they learn quicker. The Americans, as I said, they always come hot out the gate and then they cool off. I think the Canadians learn their teams, and I can't bet against McKinnon, McDavid, McCarr, the three mix, and Sidney Crosby.
Why would you?
It's just, I feel like they're going to get it done tonight, but at the same time, and I don't want to make anyone nervous, the Americans, I mean, they've closed the gap here with U.S.A. hockey. They are an incredible team, and the one thing that is going to define this is whether Connor Hellebuyck has a good night tonight. He is by far, I will say it right now, he is the best goalie in the NHL, and if he's on his game, we're in trouble.
You
So
just
go
gotta
Canada,
send
but
somebody,
yeah.
You send somebody in to crash the net right out
That's
of
what
the
I was
gates.
going to say.
Set the
Get
tone.
in his head early.
Set the tone.
You got to do it.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely, 100%. Well, hey, speaking of health and healthiness, in just a second, our Real Talk Roundtable for today, a special edition of it. We're shining the spotlight on women's health with 3 of the world's top researchers. That's coming up in just a couple of seconds. But first, I want to remind you, as we're talking to Chris about the new dynamic out of the White House and the trade and the tariffs and where this economy's bouncing around when events beyond our borders are putting Canada's economy in jeopardy. We've got to make the right choices here at home, like investing in world-class research and learning that fuels Alberta's prosperity. We can't afford to lose the teachers, the researchers, the students that we need to power Alberta's future. And that's why we're inviting you to check out supportthespark.ca and help keep our future strong. Look at that. When we first started, they were hoping to have 100 letters sent by this online form. There were about 60 done. I see we're at 800 plus now. And Real Talkers, I'm asking you to keep the pressure on there. That's supportthespark.ca. This is a message from the Association of Academic Staff at the University of Alberta. Our friends at the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce want to remind you about the benefits of membership. We're just fresh off another edition of the Chamber Ball at the end of January. I was so proud to host that. It's like the event of the year for Edmonton's business community. You can check out more about your business's most valuable investment. That's an Edmonton Chamber membership. Learn more about how you can network with colleagues. Learn more about the businesses around you by checking out edmontonchamber.com. If you are in the workforce and looking to shake things up, or maybe outside of it, underemployed, unemployed, with a lot to offer a company, you're a self-starter, you're motivated, you want to be part of something big and new, something that's moving forward, I want to recommend you check out Kubi.ca. They're Canada's fastest growing solar installers, working across Canada, Alberta, and BC in particular, and they're hiring in all 4 of their locations. We're talking about Kamloops, Lethbridge, Calgary, and Edmonton. You can check out their new website with integrated renewable solutions. Get a free quote today, too, for a solar installation at Kubi.ca. And our friends at Friesen Brothers want to remind you of what's coming up through the year as part of their 70th anniversary. A shout out to this family-owned business, absolutely iconic in the 16 communities that they serve. And Friesen Brothers is proud to be supporting the future of Alberta food. This is an amazing event coming up at Nate's Ernest's Restaurant. You can check out more on their website, friesen.com. An opportunity to see the brilliant culinary creators of today and tomorrow. You can find the details on this event Saturday, February 22nd at friesen.com. Get your tickets. It will sell out. If you've never been to Ernest's Dining Room at Nate, it's such a unique location. You can see this bright young talent happening with some of Alberta's best producers in the spotlight. Again, that's the future of Alberta food, February 22nd. Find out all the details at friesen.com. Real Talkers, we've been talking to you for a few days now about this Luminaries Luncheon that's coming up on the 7th of March. This is a really, really neat signature event at one of the crown jewels in Edmonton's downtown, the JW Marriott, in support of the Alberta Women's Health Foundation. It got us thinking, when's the last time we had a meaningful, fulsome, informed, and candid conversation about research, about advancements in women's health across the country and beyond. And I'm grateful on this special edition of the Real Talk Roundtable that 3 experts in their field have agreed to join us here in studio. Dr. Sofia Ahmed is academic lead for women's health research at the WCHRI. We'll get into what that is, this research institute, and with research emphasizing sex and gender differences in kidney and cardiovascular outcomes. Thank you so much for making time for us, and welcome to the studio.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Dr. Jane Schulz here as well, the chair of the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at the University of Alberta, the Alberta Women's Health Foundation chair in women's health research. It's nice to welcome you back to the show, but this time in studio. You're making your in-studio debut, Doctor.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having us.
Grateful to have you here. And rounding out our panel is Dr. Colleen Norris, the Calvert-Zen Chair in Women's Health Research with numerous roles across the faculties of nursing, medicine, and dentistry in the School of Public Health. It's nice to have you back on the show as well, Doctor. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, when we talk about women's health, is it fair to say that for many, many years, is there consensus now that it's not been treated as a specific discipline, that healthcare practitioners haven't always approached health in the context of women's health?
I think absolutely you've hit the nail on the head with women's health. I mean, over the years, we've gone back and forth as to whether there should be a discipline of women's health that's separate. But the bottom line that we're discovering in everything we're doing is that we still think of women as small men, and we ignore the facts of their femaleness, of being a woman, and how it affects their health. And so, especially in cardiovascular disease, which is what I work in that area, that we're identifying that women's heart disease is completely different from men's heart disease, and it's related to their reproductive system and reproductive aging, and no one's ever taken a look at that.
You're co-chair of the Prairie Working Group of the Canadian Women's Heart Health Alliance. Obviously a prominent role that you've taken on there. I think for a lot of people that's probably news to them, that the cardiovascular health conversations and approaches to it need to be dramatically different for men or women.
And they do, absolutely. And the reason the Canadian Women's Heart Health Alliance was established was because we were, like 78% of women were being misdiagnosed or having a diagnosis missed when they went into hospital or went into the emergency saying something's wrong with my heart. And as we progressed over the last 6 years of the Canadian Women's Heart Health Alliance, we've identified that it's a different type of heart disease. It isn't your heart has coronary arteries sitting on top, and those get plugged when you have a heart attack, and because they're delivering oxygen to your heart. And that isn't the type of heart disease women have. So they go for the tests that we have always recognized where the plugs are at, and you have a lesion that has to be fixed. And the cardiologist will say, well, there's no lesions here, so it mustn't be your heart. But we have discovered it's still their heart. It's just all the microvascular system. And we don't have tests to diagnose that right now.
Like to present day, we don't have tests.
To present day, we don't have tests for that.
How significant, like if you were to compare that discovery or that advancement of understanding in your field, how significant is that? Is that like Is that the internet? Is that rockets to the moon?
It is. It is absolutely. When we finally recognize that it's a different type of disease, we can start really advancing on what we're doing in women's heart health. And the only way we can do that is with the research that we're doing to say, here, we've got the evidence for you now.
Okay, we're going to circle back on heart health because I know that this Luminaries Luncheon is doing a lot in funding a lot of that advancement. It's also something statistically speaking that everybody's interested in. Either somebody has lost someone to an incident or to heart disease, or someone is experiencing it, or somebody is looking at the statistics and realizing that their own reckoning could look like a battle with it, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Doctor, what drew you into your specific field?
So in terms of kidney disease, or in terms
like
of
just your area of research, your area of interest. I mean, obviously, the pursuit of a career to this pedigree involves a great degree of conviction, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, fair enough. So in terms of kidney disease, actually, my first exposure to kidney disease research was I had a faculty member who said, I'm doing a research project looking at the birth control pill and its effect on blood flow to the kidneys, and I'll be honest, this is really early in my research career. I had never thought about the birth control pill doing anything other than preventing pregnancy. And it actually has a lot of other effects in the body. It changes your blood pressure. It increases your blood pressure reversibly, but it does increase your blood pressure. It does change, we found from this project, blood flow to the kidney. And we do know that now, because we have started to collect this data, that worldwide, women are more likely to have advanced kidney disease than are men. I'm not saying this is all due to the birth control pill. I don't want anybody to make that jump. But, just to recognize that there are differences in terms of it doesn't matter what, we talked a bit about heart disease, and Dr. Norris is certainly the expert in this area. But really any chronic condition, any health condition is affected by our sex and our gender. And when I talk about our sex, I'm talking about biology. I'm talking about our genetic complement. I'm talking about our physiology, our reproductive hormones, our anatomy. And then when I talk about gender, that interacts with sex. But this, we often think that's gender identity, and that certainly plays a role. But that's also the roles that we play. Are we the caregiver at home? Are we the primary earner? Our relations that we have with each other. And of course, there's institutionalized gender. So that's like the distribution of power and resources in society that affects people of different genders differently. So all of these things, I like to tell people this is not my quote, but other people's, the world writes on the body. So for example, going back to your question about what drew me to kidney disease, kidney disease presents in so many different ways, and our life, so there's our biology that it impacts it, there's also our life experiences that impact it, and so it's a great specialty for that.
Wow. When you talk about sex and gender and the correlation to health conditions, health challenges, health outcomes, are we at a point in 2025 where there is consensus on that, or would there be colleagues of yours or medical professionals that would see the statement that you just made as controversial or up for debate?
I would say that that's changing. If you had asked me that question 5-10 years ago, there would be tremendous debate about it. I think there is less, and I'd be interested to hear what my colleagues think. There is still a debate about it, but I think no one would argue that someone who is a single mom who is living alone with no support and has a chronic condition is probably going to be in a different have a different health outcome than someone who has a tremendous support system, who is has a high income. These are all, has nothing to do with your biology, but these are all things that are outside the clinic, outside the hospital, but definitely impact our health. So
yeah, you've mentioned high income a couple of times. Is that
have
like?
I? Okay.
Well, I'm just always curious in kind of the demographics behind health research and learning things. Like, I guarantee most of the audience, and me included, I've already learned like 5 things in this conversation. It's 10 minutes old, so this is good. We're on a good path. But is that like the obvious stuff? Like, people can afford better treatments, they can afford to eat more regularly, eat typically healthier food, or is there more to it than that? I'm intrigued by that one.
Yeah. So everything that you just said, Ryan, absolutely. If you can afford good food, if you can afford to have a stable housing situation, if you can afford to get yourself out of a situation where you don't feel safe, these are all things that are going to impact if you can live in a neighborhood where it's safe. We tell everybody be more active, but if it's not safe to go out on the streets for a walk, well, you're not going to be particularly active. So all of those things do impact our health, and those are outside the clinic. They're outside the hospital.
It's all talk. It's talk of holistic healthcare, isn't it? Like, we're focusing on your research today, but I just think when we look at the budget line item for healthcare, and everybody's talking about it right now, there's a lot of eyes on AHS and the provincial government. And don't worry, I'm not dragging you 3 research experts into that, but I'm just saying the general public now looks at the tens of billions of dollars that are spent provincially and hundreds of billions federally. And if you could make that compelling argument or get more people to recognize that investments in social supports and everything else actually drop the cost of healthcare delivery to the general public, I think that it's a really compelling argument that deserves to be made.
We did, sorry to interrupt, but we did an amazing study looking at gender.
Absolutely.
This is so cool. So this was across Canada, and people under 55 years of age, men and women, who had a heart attack. And what we did is we created what we called a gendered index. And it's all these variables that Sofia is talking about. So we looked at their roles at home and how many kids and how many hours of housework. And the gender index was a score of 0 to 100. And if you scored 100, you were more likely to perform duties that women were more likely, behaviors more typically ascribed to women, childcare and those sort of things. But both men and women had high gender index scores. But at the end of the day, what we discovered is that people who scored high on the gender index, irrespective of all of their health and biology and their heart attack, people who scored high on that gender index were 4 times as likely to return with a second heart attack in the first year. And the interesting thing about that, the biggest driver of that gender index was the question, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your stress level at home? So this isn't that your kidneys aren't working or your heart isn't working. This is saying your stress level at home is making you 4 times more likely to come back with a second heart attack.
And this is something that we joke about. It's like we're like, people are like looking at someone burning the candle at both ends. I mean, isn't it kind of the equivalent of when we didn't understand like CTE and brain injuries, and we'd say people got their bells rung? We joke about, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have a heart attack. Like I'm working, but you're saying that there's research that shows that actually can be a major contributing factor, the stress that many of us don't take seriously.
Yeah, and because of the research I've been doing we call it post-reproductive aging, if you're stressed all the time, so in the old days, if you were stressed, you went into what was called fight or flight, and you had a cortisol, which helped you kill that tiger, either run from the tiger or kill the tiger. And so we talk about the tigers that are happening today. So all these things that are causing stress today. But the one thing that I discovered in all this research is the brain prioritizes the production of cortisol over all of our other hormones that we need to keep our body working. If you're in chronic stress, the brain prioritizes the production of cortisol to help you deal with that stress. And so for women, it means it prioritizes cortisol over estrogen, your own estrogen that you're producing. And estrogen is responsible, as Sofia said, for your blood pressure and getting rid of bad fats and keeping the good fats and keeping your vessels, your vascular system contracting. So all of those things don't happen when you're under high stress because you don't have the estrogen to do it. And your body keeps pumping out the cortisol to help you deal with your stress. And I don't think women know that.
And I think important things in this are that this clinical research is what drives clinical innovation, right? So the changes in care, so that then we're able to provide new methods of care, and our clinical activity is based on evidence that is done by the panel of researchers. And we're supported in that by the Alberta Women's Health Foundation, by the Women's and Children's Health Research Institute. And one thing that I really appreciate in Edmonton is that our WICRI, the Women's and Children's Health Research Institute, includes women. So a lot of the research institutes across Canada are labeled as maternal, child, newborn. So they focus on maternal health, which is very important, but then it excludes what has been alluded to. We often exclude that postmenopausal, the mature women's health. 50% of our population is women, so 50% of people are going to go through menopause. There are issues like endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, fibroids, pelvic pain, urogynecology, which is what I focus on. So 1 in 3 women will develop a pelvic floor disorder in their lifetime, and this can include peeing your pants or having pelvic organ prolapse. And our team at the Lois Hole Hospital for Women, which is supported by the Alberta Women's Health Foundation and my endowed chair in research, has done a lot of work on that. So we've looked at immigrant women and their lack of access to care. We've looked at rural and remote health. One of our researchers, Dr. Anik Poirier and Dr. Mo Hayakataki, have done work on virtual care and COVID. We had one of our subspecialty trainees that got a grant from supported by Alberta Women's Health Foundation, but also supported by a company, and looked at virtual care and Zoom classes. So there are a lot of innovations in care that are driven by these research activities. And also in my hat as department chair, we're responsible for our trainees and training. So we're going to have an expansion to the Grand Prairie Medical Campus starting in September. So we're going to be training people in community, which also we're hoping will address some of these inequities in regards to access in rural areas. And then our trainees are also part of the Women's and Children's Health Research Institute and are supported by all our researchers, because they also do projects then that gets them involved in the discovery and innovation and drives these changes. So, I mean, you alluded to like AHS and health budgets. I want to make it clear we focus on patient care. We're involved in frontline care. We're involved in research to support women's health, and we're involved in training those future health providers. And that is our primary focus.
People are going to be hearing what you're talking about, and they're going to be going, how can I help assist this research? What can I do to advance this research? Number one, that's Dr. Jane Schulz, by the way. Your passion's amazing. The minute that you were on camera, a Real Talker by the name of Heidi in our live chat, she says, I remember Dr. Schulz from being on Real Talk a few years ago. She says it was a great interview. She's looking forward to hearing from you today. If someone remembers your interview from a few years ago, you did all right on that. But I want to let everybody know, and I want to follow up asking you in particular about your area of research, but all of this in support, the doctors joining us this morning in support of this Luminaries Luncheon. It's coming up on Friday, March 7th, and lighting the way from lab to life, presented by the Scotiabank Women Initiative at the beautiful JW Marriott. There's still a few tickets available. It will sell out, but you can get them today at albertawomenshealthfoundation.org. We'll pop it in the live chat. We'll put it in the show notes on the podcast and on YouTube so you can get your tickets today. Dr. Schulz, you're, in the chair of the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at the University of Alberta. Like the average layperson that has no idea, somebody like me would just go, obviously, OBGYNs have had a focus on women's health. Obviously, that's an area of health research that I'm sure has specifically and in fulsome fashion focused on women's health outcomes. I bet you've seen your field evolve over the years. How would you describe it as changing, and how is research driving some of those changes?
So, that's a great question. It's a huge thing. It's a core part of the medical school training, but we also are involved in training other health providers. So we train nurses, pharmacists, physios in different aspects of women's health research. When I started, a lot of people were still doing their own deliveries. There were not advances in care in preeclampsia, like hypertension in pregnancy. There's been new screening tools. We're seeing less, obviously, maternal mortality, but there have been drives even to reduce that further. We have a special team at the ALEC that focuses on high-risk pregnancies. We have our maternal fetal medicine unit, and we have a lot of our WICRI researchers are involved in that. So we have Dr. Sandy Davidge, who's the executive director of the Women's and Children's Health Research Institute, and she does research on cardiovascular disease in women, but also hypertension in pregnancy. One of our researchers, Dr. Olson, does work on preterm birth because we still have high rates of preterm birth, and that's one of the high killers of babies because they're born early and they have complications, but we've advanced significantly in that field. We've looked at most recently, I had a summer student who was involved. He's actually a kinesiology student, and we actually looked at ergonomics in the workplace. So you look at surgeons and their positioning in the OR, and 70% of our surgeons have pain while they're operating. How would you feel if your surgeon has pain while they're operating? And there are sex and gender impacts of that, as has been alluded to, in terms of, are they the caregiver? Are they then going home and looking after their families or their elderly relatives? There's a difference between females and males. So we talk about that whole, I don't want to come back to it again, but the procurement issue, the surgical instruments for women, they don't fit. They were made for men. So women are more likely to have challenges in terms of operating. So that's something that one of my summer students, who's a kinesiology student, Noah Martin, is looking at that and looking at the effects in the OR. So there are all these different pieces that sort of interlink into training and provision of care. One of our researchers, like I said, has looked at immigrant women. We were able to get a grant from the Alberta Medical Association to support development of modules. We have a chronic pelvic pain clinic that's doing a lot of innovative care. And we have people, too, that are presenting publicly. So we have a nurse practitioner in menopause who, along with Naisha Yüksel, is presenting at the TELUS Center next week. I think a lot of this is education, getting the word out there. We're doing a sex night at the Science Center March 13th. I have no affiliation with TELUS Science Center, but it's just a good opportunity to educate the public in some of these areas of women's health. So I think there are huge opportunities, but I would encourage everyone to come to Luminaries on March 7th because we're all going to be there, and a whole team of us are going to be there, and we're all going to talk about it. So
I think you need your own podcast. That's what I think. I think you need
happy
your
to
own
come
podcast. We've got. I mean, I've got some questions, and I've been scribbling notes as all three of you have been talking, and I want to get to more of those in just a second. Meatball Auditor joining us in our live chat, powered by Park Power, says this sounds like an absolutely great initiative. Dr. Schulz just mentioned this Luminaries Luncheon, and we're here to ensure that they absolutely pack the house. Not just to contribute to the important fundraising and amplify the impact of this research, but also so regular folks like you and I have an opportunity to rub shoulders with some of the top researchers in their field and better understand the future of women's health across the country. I want to encourage you, don't miss your chance to join the first ever Alberta Women's Health Foundation Luminaries Luncheon. This is presented by the Scotiabank Women Initiative. And again, back to our panel in just a quick second, but Alberta Women's Health Foundation.org is where you can buy your tickets. I already let you know this as well. I was connecting with my good friend Linda Steele the other day, legendary broadcaster in the Metro Edmonton region. She's traveling from Vancouver back to the capital city to moderate this panel, which is going to be super fun. And of course, a keynote address by Joanna Griffiths. She's the founder and CEO of Knixwear. If you know Knixwear, lingerie and counter, you know Knixwear. She's going to be sharing her presentation on the Knix Way, building a brand with purpose. You can get your tickets to this luncheon. Again, it's March 7th at the JW Marriott by visiting the link in the show notes, and you can find it online as well. Our friends at California Closets proudly present the Real Talk live stream weekdays across 7 different platforms. They understand a thing or two about meeting people where they're at. Custom closets and storage solutions for the entire home. California Closets is proudly locally owned right here in the province of Alberta, operating out of beautiful showrooms in the 2 big cities, employing everyday Albertans, sourcing their materials from right here in Canada, with all of their manufacturing happening locally. Your journey with California Closets all starts with a free design consultation. You can book that today on their websites. That's californiaclosets.ca. Our friends at Athabasca University want to remind you about the opportunities that await at AU, and this is the barrier-free road to post-secondary education, which is why tens of thousands of alumni attribute the AU Advantage to plugging them into their own career opportunities. You can learn more about the Advantage online. You know, more than 94% of alumni surveyed say they're satisfied with the quality of their education. 92% are working in a job related to their field of study. Open your options today with the offerings at Athabasca University. And to our friends at Complete Care Restoration, we see your vans, we see your trucks, we see your trailers in Jasper and other communities that have been impacted by natural disaster. You know, Complete Care Restoration for more than 25 years has been meeting homeowners and business owners where they're at. It could be a burst pipe in this weather. It could be a sewer backup. Maybe you've taken a small home renovation project and found black mold or asbestos. Don't mess around with it on your own, and don't wait for it to get worse. You're going to want to get in touch with the team today. We recommend them. 2 thumbs up. We've worked with them. You'll find them online at CompleteCareRestoration.ca. We're shining the spotlight on women's health in this edition of the Real Talk Roundtable, and we're very pleased to be joined by 3 of the foremost researchers in their field. All of them will be at this Luminaries Luncheon: Dr. Sofia Ahmed, Dr. Jane Schulz, and Dr. Colleen Norris. I wanted to jump into the live chat for a second here. Cherie says, my life changed by starting estrogen replacement. Says I had to do my own research and I had to talk to my doctor about it to actually get the meds, but thankfully he agreed. Vamp Fashion, sharing personal experience, says my mom was found to have heart failure caused by over-prescribing. Says her family doc implicated in this. She made it to 80 but had many strokes and heart failures undiagnosed for many, many years. What about this from Tony, who says I had to fight with my GP to refer me to a cardiologist when I was having chest pains. Took me almost a year. He relented, and I ended up having to get an angioplasty. How many times have you heard that story?
A lot. Like, that's the issue in women's heart health right now, is that we don't recognize that they're having heart health issues. And so women really, in Alberta, we did a study, and in Alberta there are 300 women a year on average that go to the emergency department and say something's wrong with their heart, are discharged home and return having had a heart attack within 30 days. And some of those women went to the emergency department up to 15 times. And the issue is, as they keep going to the emergency department and the staff or the clinicians keep saying it's not your heart, then the immediate go-to is it's in your head, right? And so it's not only the issue of not getting diagnosed with heart disease, but these the women suffer from mental illness because they're being told nothing's wrong with you, and they keep saying something is wrong with me, but it's stress in your life, or it's in your head.
Huh. I'm not trying to, I'm the son of a GP, right? My dad practiced medicine for like 40 years proudly. And it was amazing for me to watch the dedication to the craft. The family doctor of today, the job description is very different. The landscape is different. The service delivery is different. And they've kind of got to be a Jack or Jill of all trades, right? You got to just understand absolutely everything, not miss anything, and sort of have a good base of understanding. What's your assessment of where the GPs are at today, how research is maybe informing that awareness, and maybe some work that could be done?
Yeah, so first, shout out to our GP colleagues. They are working flat out. And,
no kidding.
And that's amazing that your dad used to it. Like, really, huge respect. So they are doing a great job with what they've got. Our job for people who are researchers, subspecialists, is to basically get that research into guidelines, make it easy for family docs to and other practitioners, et cetera, to use. So just to bring it back to the research perspective. So to give you an example of, and Dr. Norris has done a great job talking about how women have not been included in cardiovascular and heart medication trials or any kind of studies. This is true across all forms of medicine. So this is U.S. data, but over a 4-year period, the Food and Drug Administration pulled 10 drugs from the market. And the reason they pulled those drugs is because they cause death or serious organ damage. 8 out of those 10 drugs disproportionately affected women. So the reason that was there, and the reason that happened, is because women and female models, we're talking about like female cells, we're talking about, mouse models, they were all male models. So the female, that female model hadn't been included in that pipeline, that research pipeline, getting that drug to market. And so that's really what at Women and Children's Health Research Institute at the U.A. and supported by the Alberta Women's Health Foundation. Like, this is the type of research that we're doing, so that we're looking at things that are, conditions that are sex specific to females. So this would be, as Dr. Schulz said, endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, also things that are just normal over the female lifespan, menopause, pregnancy, contraception. We also look at conditions that disproportionately affect women. So this would be depression, this would be autoimmune disease. And then there's also things that, again, going back to Dr. Norris's work, things that affect everybody, but affect women and men, for example, differently. Like how we've all seen that photo, right? Like of a heart attack. We all think, someone clutching their chest.
Yes.
The man goes to work, he's wearing a suit and tie, and he clearly everybody knows he's having a heart attack. It even has a name. It's called Levine's sign. This is not how women present with heart disease. Typically, some women do, but many women don't. They get tired, they get, sweating, they get some nausea, and this is what leads to what Dr. Norris was saying. We don't recognize that as heart attack, and so we send them home. So the researchers at WICRI, we look at sex-specific stuff, we look at sex-predominant conditions, as well as conditions that present differently, and we do this, from the cellular model to mouse models to human models to public health, and so. Having said that, so we need to do this research, then we need to get it into guidelines. And so back to your question, so that it's easy for family doctors and other practitioners everyone's doing the best they can with the studies they've got, but they don't have the studies yet. And that's what our group, and I say our group, the people at WICRI and supported by Alberta Women's Health Foundation, this is what we do. Well,
one of the takeaways from our conversation today is I'm getting the impression that research begets research begets research. Like there's kind of this progression of discovery or what have you, right? I mean, you were like basically bouncing in your chair talking about the stuff earlier. Just the enthusiasm is obvious and palpable. But and you all may have different answers to this same question. But what sort of informs or inspires research for you in particular, or you and your colleagues? Is it like in the movies where all of a sudden somebody has that eureka moment and that they kind of have that idea and then they go at it?
Well, I think, you're doing your clinical care. Like I do 50, 60% clinical care as well. So I'm interacting with patients day to day and with the learners, and they ask questions, right? Everyone asks questions as you're doing things like, should we be doing this way? Should we be using this piece of equipment? Should we be providing this medication? And that's what then, a lot of it is clinical questions that then spear on research trials, because then you sit there and you think, okay, we should look at that. We should look at the impacts of we're doing a study right now, a scoping review, Dr. Ahmed and myself, on looking at the impacts of hysterectomy on future outcomes in women, and also their history of pregnancy and things. So there are all these questions that we have. So even the one I talked about the ergonomics in the operating room, we look at care pathways, and there are ways to study those, and efficiencies and different education methods can also be brought into the research realm. So I think part of it is the WICRI provides the platform to answer these questions, and then the medical school itself has this distributed learning platform, and family medicine are part of that. They do their own research studies, but we also provide then the sort of specialty information that then can be distributed through that curriculum. So I think when you come back to your comment about family physicians and community, it's huge, right? Because would you move to a community in Alberta as a teacher, firefighter, RCMP officer if you knew you or your spouse could not have a baby there, and you had to drive 2 hours, 4 hours, right? We're seeing closures of some of those things. So it's important to provide those supports in community. And part of that is through guidelines or through supporting those practitioners in a distributed format so that they can provide that ongoing care to people in rural, remote areas as well. And that comes again back to some of those social determinants of health. If you're in a rural, remote area, you're immigrant, you've got lesser access to things, that also impacts your health outcomes in some of these studies that we see.
Sylvie's watching right now and says WICRI is an example of the value of educational institutions. How much of this research would not be possible? We're talking a lot about the Alberta Women's Health Foundation and these incredible partnerships. I think a lot of people probably take for granted the work that needs to be done. We just assume, we think, Canada's got public health care, it's well funded. We see, and everybody just sort of assumes that the necessary research is happening. The supports are going to be there.
So the research is happening, is just what is being funded.
Yeah.
So we have great questions. So just to follow up on Dr. Schultz's question or answer, and you were asking about, do we get our research questions from the clinic? And the answer is absolutely yes. So for example, I'm a kidney doctor. Nobody, and this applies to all specialties. So if someone's living with kidney disease, but this is true, living with heart disease, living with rheumatoid arthritis or lupus, nobody wants to have an unexpected pregnancy. So, and because that's not good for their disease, that's not good for their pregnancy, it's just not good for their overall health. So I'll have patients say, okay, that's great. So then what kind of contraception should I use? And, what's the safest for my kidney disease, my lupus, my heart disease? And the answer is, that research hasn't been done because women haven't been included in those studies that have looked at the natural progression of whatever, name condition X. And so that's the research, some of the research that's being done through WICRI. This is a really, when in the United Nations looked at contraception use around the world, Canada's number 3, 73% of people of reproductive age use contraception. And we don't know what to tell them. What is the right kind of contraception for their chronic condition? So this is just an example of how the research ideas do come from the clinic, and what we do in research goes back to the clinic. So it really is a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, no kidding. Sharon's watching us right now in our live chat, powered by Park Power, says, I went through the whole it's in your head before I was diagnosed with lupus. And that's resonated with people. Lauren's sharing about how that's impacted his family losing his wife and his daughter's situation now. Lauren, our thoughts are with you. It's amazing what's happening in this live chat. The three of you being here and speaking so candidly about this, people are sharing in our chat in a really remarkable way, this community. Ms. KD is tuned in, says, tell me about it, says, I've had chronic pain for 4 years, still the root of the issue, undiagnosed. It's caused me, says Ms. KD, to spiral in my mental health. I finally feel like the depression cloud is lifting. You're nodding your head.
Well, because it's a women's health story. One of the things I wanted to say, too, about WICRI and Alberta Women's Health Foundation is it's important for the research to be done for the clinicians. But what I think WICRI and Alberta Women's Health Foundation do really well is we need to make women aware of what's going on in their bodies, and having things like the Luminaries talks where you can learn about what's going on, so that when you're better armed when you go into the physician and they say, well, I can't find a diagnosis for this, and you say, okay, it's not in my head, this is what's happening to me. So the awareness piece amongst women, to me, is the most valuable piece that's happening in Alberta that I don't see happening anywhere else.
And I think one thing you had talked about before was the change over the course of practice.
Yeah.
Because I graduated actually from the U.S.A. Medicals in 1992.
Oh, yeah.
And I did some training here, went away, and then came back because I came back to Edmonton. One thing that has changed over time is who's involved in the research. So now we often have patient participants as part of trial planning or discussion, and so they often drive the research that's done as well. So historically it was probably more hierarchical and there was more that paternalistic thing in the medical field, but I think now we go more with team-based care. I'm a huge proponent of team-based care because we have that at the ALEC and we're really fortunate to have that. And you go to people's strengths, right? So everyone in the team has their strengths and we leverage their strengths, and it's the same in a research team as well, right? So you want patients as part of that whole advocacy and participation and driving some of the innovation and clinical care.
Alberta Girl says her OB told her that there was a shortage of OBs, she says, and that was 19 years ago. How are we looking with the graduating classes and people pursuing this specific field?
So one thing that is exciting is we are increasing the number of spots in training in obstetrics and gynecology. So the government did commit to that and has provided us some funding to support that, and that will also be part of this distributed curriculum. So the U.S.A. have partnered with Grand Prairie Polytechnique. As I mentioned, that medical school will open in September of this year. University of Calgary has partnered with Lethbridge, and theirs will open a year after. I want to shout out that Edmonton's going to be first doing that. The U.S.A. is championing this. And part of that is due to Brenda Hemmelgarn, our dean, who's like really pushing that forwards. And our team, we have Shirley Schipper, who's head of the Vice Dean of Education, and she's helping support that medical school, and Daryl Wolfson. So shout out to them because it's a huge thing. So hopefully with that, we'll provide the additional training, but also train whether it's nurse practitioners or increased midwifery training or family physicians. Like, you need the right provider, right patient, right location, right? So there's lots of opportunities as we expand programs to provide care to a broader scope. Rural areas, yeah.
Wobbly Ink's watching us, great handle, on YouTube right now, says she's been a participant of the Canadian longitudinal study on aging for about 12 years now, says it's a 20-year university study, says she's happy to be part of it. That resonates with you, I guess. That's
fantastic. The only way that, so thank you for being part of that study, and really that's how we advance the care that we can provide, right? By having people, and I just want to follow up Dr. Schulz, that like people are experts in their own condition. So if people who are living with a condition can be part of studies, that's only going to circle back and improve everyone's care. So shout out to that research participant.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
What
Thank
was
you.
It again? It was Wobbly Ink. That's
Thank you,
great,
Wobbly Ink.
Great handle. In closing, doctors, and we just respect your time. Totally appreciate your availability. But I want to wrap. Typically, we wrap our roundtables with just kind of going around. Give us a closing thought, something to think about, maybe a call to action. Doctor, you've talked a lot about inequities in the system. It could be something that you're optimistic about. So, it's kind of a bright part of the future, or maybe something that we need to shine more of a light on. Dr. Ahmed, why don't you go first?
I think we're at the beginning, the precipice of something really exciting. And I know we're talking about the Luminaries Luncheon, and that is going to be massive. But really, I think this recognition that that women's health is important. It's important not just to the individual; it's important to us as a society, and it's time to get going.
Love it, Dr. Norris.
I'm so impressed with the people that are writing into you, but for me, the biggest thing that's changing this narrative for women's health is the women getting involved themselves and trying to figure out how do we advocate for other women. It's not just me going in and saying this is what I need for my health. It's discussions amongst friends and things like the Luminaries Luncheon, where you get together and you hear things and it sparks someone, and one woman tells 10 other women, and we have a movement going.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. Doctor, last word to you.
Just thank you for highlighting this, because this is our moms, our daughters, our sisters. There are women in all our lives, right? I really thank the people online for chipping in. I think just promoting the message, promoting the education. Women's health is important, and please get involved in research, and please come to the luncheon and support what we're doing in whatever capacity you can. I
love it. That's Dr. Jane Schulz. She's been joined by Dr. Colleen Norris and Dr. Sofia Ahmed. You can learn more about this and get your tickets today to the Luminaries Luncheon, again, at albertawomenshealthfoundation.org. Just follow the links. It's coming up on the 7th of March at the JW Marriott. I haven't even talked about the actual lunch. It's going to be amazing. Their culinary team there just kills it every single time. Linda Steele, a keynote address, and obviously so much more. You can learn more about the event and make sure you book a table. What a great outing with friends, with colleagues, better your understanding, and have an opportunity to connect directly with some of these researchers and learn more about the incredible work that they're doing. It's the Luminaries Luncheon. Real Talk, very proud to support it, coming up on the 7th of March at albertawomenshealthfoundation.org. Thank you, my friends, for doing this. We appreciate it.
Thank you so
You
much.
got it. Real Talkers, let us know what you think about this to talk@ryanjesperson.com. It's the personal stories that really resonate, isn't it? I want to thank all of you that took the time to get personal in the live chat, to put it out there, to help us better understand the world through your eyes and your experience. This conversation has been made possible by Real Talk partners like our friends at North Road Investment Council. They have a pretty simple but a pretty significant question to ask you, and that is basically, how did the Canadian equity portion of your portfolio do in 2024? Do you know? I know for a lot of you, this is all over your radar. I don't need to tell you that the Canadian stock market, as measured by the TSX Composite Index, returned over 21% last year, and it's a return that all Canadians should be proud of, but a lot of people might not be paying attention to those details. Index investing tools are used by sophisticated investors around the world, including in our home province with North Road Investment Council. To learn more about using passive investment tools in your investment portfolio, check out their website at northroadic.com. You can also link directly to their YouTube channel. Some really informative content there. Make sure to subscribe. That's northroadic.com. Real Talk proud to be partnering with U.S.A. Youth Services, a remarkable nonprofit based out of Alberta's capital city, working with young adults, at-risk young adults, 18 to 25, that basically are just one opportunity away from a transformative educational or employment experience. You can learn more about their vision statement and exactly what drives UCAN's Youth Services values. They're relentless, they're inclusive, they're accountable, patient, they're building momentum. On their website, ucan.ca, we are going to have a blast in March at their UCAN Comedy Nights, the 10th through the 12th, the 17th through the 19th at Starlight Casino and Rick Bronson's comic strip. You can get your tickets online at ucancomedy.com. I'm going to be there the night of the 17th with a table full, and I would love for you to do the exact same thing. There's going to be a live auction item, by the way. We're putting Lunch with Me up for grabs. We're going to take you out somewhere nice, and it's going to wind up with a Real Talk studio tour. John, you're going to have to be on your best behavior for that. The Real Talk studio tour. We'll be bringing our live auction winners through, and we'll send them home with some Real Talk studio mugs. You can get your tickets to UCAN Comedy Nights at ucancomedy.com. And our friends at Park Power, you know, they're powering our Real Talk live chat, the liveliest and, by the way, most respectful live chat. I mean, everybody's just been on their best behavior. I wish people could have seen your face when I said that, John. People have been on their best behavior today and through this week. Park Power is your friendly local utilities provider, offering electricity, natural gas, and internet across the province of Alberta. Low rates, awesome service, and they share their profits with Alberta charities. They share their profits with nonprofits. Who else is doing that? I love these guys. I love the way they roll. They're currently offering the lowest fixed rate for electricity in Alberta at 6.69 cents per kilowatt hour. You can find them on social at Park Power Ltd. Compare rates today at parkpower.ca. Great conversation with these research experts, and I sure appreciate everybody, like I said, contributing in the live chat, talking about their own personal experience. I didn't know that. I mean, I feel like there were a million things that I learned there, but one of them, that depression disproportionately impacts women. And I'm thinking there at the same time, we focus on women's health. We talk about men's mental health. We're starting to better understand the roles that sex and gender can play in health challenges, health outcomes, health treatments. And isn't it interesting that women are disproportionately impacted by depression? Men are disproportionately likely to die by suicide. I thought that was kind of an interesting dichotomy and really fascinating conversation. Shauna says, I was fortunate to find a psychiatrist that was able to finally give me a correct diagnosis for her health, but then referred back to my physician that had to update their knowledge. It reiterates as well, I think, for a lot of people, the role that GPs play. It was so obvious there that the doctors have so much respect for what family doctors bring to the table, but you understand the importance of that research happening to be able to have everybody better educated, including members of the general public. I feel like I learned a lot about that. Everybody's going to be talking about this game coming up on Thursday, Canada versus the U.S.A. We wanted to take a moment to let everybody know tonight that we will be away until March 31st. This is going to be our final show in just a while. We're going to get away, and I don't know what you're doing. Are you going to stick around? You sit here. The temperature's getting out of vortex zone.
Yeah,
you can actually enjoy this spring-like temps and early patio.
I'm taking a little bit of pleasure in this. I can't not find comedy in the fact that you booked a vacay.
I'm ticked off. And
immediately today, like literally when we're done the show in the afternoon, it's going to be +2. So tomorrow +4. I'm laughing a bit, but I won't laugh too long.
I'm not trying to be a jerk, but when you are leaving somewhere hot, you want everybody in your home jurisdiction to be suffering in cold.
No.
You do. You do. You want to be able to post the photo. Everybody posts it. You know the one I'm talking about in the chair by the side of the pool. Everybody posts the photo of their legs, right? And they post the photo of their toes and then the beach behind them. And you want it to be -26 with wind chill of -33 when you're doing that for it to truly land. Because you guys are all going to be walking around, no jackets on. You're going to have your sunglasses on. You're going to be enjoying outdoor patios, and it's just not going to have the same benefit for me. So
did you say 31st? People in the chat are like 31st.
March 3rd.
March 3rd.
The first show will be March 3rd.
We're taking a week off. We're not taking a month off.
Do you want to take off till the 31st? I don't think we could. There's too much happening
right
now.
You can't. Even this week, we're going to miss some things, and we're going to have to cue them back up as soon as we're back.
And we'll probably still be active on social if we know anything about ourselves. But there's no way. I mean, the premier Danielle Smith addressing these allegations of scandal and interference yesterday, basically talking, reiterating her faith in the health minister Adriana LaGrange and saying this investigation's happening and talking about discrepancies and payments for surgeries. And you all know we've been talking about this at length. We'll be getting back into it. If you didn't catch our interview with Dr. Paul Parks, past president of the Alberta Medical Association, just a couple episodes ago, make sure you check it out. That guy's throwing bombs.
The whole interview, it was the first time where I love when he's been on before, but now it's like he's off the leash and he's still being careful about what he says, and it's still intelligent and well thought out. But go watch that interview from Tuesday, because the entire thing, my mouth was just like this. It was open the entire time. And then yesterday, of course, I mean, we're watching live as our premier is answering questions, and congrats to the media because nobody held back yesterday.
Oh, what about one?
Geez, there was a straight up question that was like, have you guys received kickbacks from this? And Danielle, we were saying this during the press conference yesterday, Danielle not looking as steady as she normally does. The premier looking a little rattled. And this question came out of nowhere over the phone, so she can't see the person. And they said, we've got 2 questions on the line. And the person, the reporter, I wish I could remember who asked it, said, have either of you, Premier or Mr. LaGrange, Mrs. LaGrange, received kickbacks from medical policies or contracts? And her jaw just dropped, and she said no. And she stepped back, and Miss LaGrange came
Minister
LaGrange came in and said, no, that is that. But just the tone, it's something she's never faced before.
It's a hilarious question to ask. But you would sort of suggest that the question should be asked.
It was
but
so matter of fact.
It's a wild question to ask. It's basically are you being bribed?
Yeah.
It's
exactly. That's exactly what it was.
It's like a police detective question.
Have you accepted a
bribe?
bribe?
For a journalist, have you accepted kickbacks from healthcare companies? And the premier kind of, you just don't usually get that question. But I think when you talk about your perception of body language or whether or not the premier came across as steady or not, I think it goes to show that like the allegations are very serious and the magnitude of the allegations are very big. It's also overshadowing some other stories and some other other stuff that's significant. I mean, we talked about this cougar hunt just outside Canmore, and John E. Marriott, the photographer, the conservation photographer, that's basically been forefront. I mean, this has become national news because of his advocacy, and I should call up his Instagram here because he's just been on this like nonstop over the past week or so. I mean, brokenhearted is John. He told us in an interview. You can check it out on our podcast vault, or of course on our YouTube channel as well. But the whole country is paying attention to the plight of these 2 cougars. By the way, Johnny, he posted some trail cam video just yesterday. This is the cougar. This is the mama that was hunted, and he showed some images. He's been tracking her for 4 years, and obviously a tough discovery for him. Want to be clear, this cougar was legally hunted, and so we're talking about that intersection of legality and ethics. And so the team at Bloodsport Canada, which is a hunting advocacy group, has taken issue with some of our commentary on the show. That's fine with me, doesn't bother me, but they're also more than welcome to join us, and we want to have a fulsome conversation. So coming back that first week, we're back. I think it's going to be on the 5th of March. We're going to talk to them about this. Is there another conversation to be had? What's the other side of the cougar hunt? I'll be honest, cards on the table. He's not changing my mind in how I feel about it. I think it's brutal to shoot an animal that has young cubs or is still rearing its young. The fact that these 2 cougar kittens, 4 months old, it's estimated, are now in the care of the Calgary Zoo and have been taken out of the wild for good is ridiculous. As for every hunter I know, and you guys know I don't crack on hunting. You guys know I'm supportive of hunting. It's not my personal thing. It doesn't float my boat, but I support your right to hunt. I admire people that hunt. Some of the biggest conservationists and most serious wildlife aficionados and defenders of the ecology and the environment and sustainability. Some of the biggest ones I know and the most dedicated ones I know are hunters, and I can say with confidence that none of them are out there shooting a cow moose with a young calf or shooting an animal that has a young, and you can try to change my mind on this. We'll have the conversation about it the first week we're back, but there's that. Johnny, we haven't talked about coal mining in the Rockies forever. We've barely talked about the Liberal leadership race, save Karina Gould, who joined us in studio in our most recent episode. If you missed that, check it out. That would be the 19th of February when Karina Gould joined us and came up with a new moniker for Pierre Poilievre. I had not before heard him referred to as Timbit Trump. But she talked to us about how she's managing the underdog status of her campaign, how she raised that $125,000 and is still fighting to be considered in the mix in that leadership race, whether the media is treating her as a contender or not. But there's a lot going on. Pierre Poilievre, Donald Trump. So obviously when we're back on March 3rd, we're going to hit the ground running on a million stories.
Yeah, those numbers in the polls have changed.
No
matter which poll you look at, you can argue this and that. The gap is closing significantly here. And people will say, well, I haven't changed my opinion. But as our guest said yesterday, a lot of people who were either in the middle or maybe flipped are reconsidering now. And whether you like Mark Carney or not, like he's a better option than Justin Trudeau. And even this morning I was listening to programs and looking on Twitter, and there are people who in the media who were like, no, this is it. PP is going to be prime minister. They're changing their tune now. They're saying like this has shifted things. So like we can't ignore it. We're not saying like it's a dead, like things are for certain, but Carney coming into this race has really shifted things.
Yeah, and I think it's just. I mean, is it? Here's a question that we could debate. This one is one that over coffee or beers, but like, is it Mark Carney? Is it some contenders that people are, I mean, here we are like, the media is not giving Karina Gould a fair shake.
No,
and then 30 seconds later, we're just talking about Mark Carney.
But is it down south
realistically
stuff?
speaking,
is it all
or
of
is
that?
it just
I think
that
it's all of it.
people talk about the ABC vote in Canada, the anyone but conservative vote, where it's just kind of like you're voting against a party as opposed to for one. In this case, is it anyone but Trudeau? Is it the fact that the Prime Minister is leaving, ABT, and he's leaving, and that breath of fresh air is seeing the Liberals surge back. Most recent polling that I saw still shows a conservative lead at 40%, with the Liberals back at 37%. And that's not necessarily the Conservatives losing support. Maybe there is some of that, but it's also just the absolute collapse of the federal NDP support. And that's something else that we'll talk about and that we'll look into. So a lot of storylines. We asked Karina Gould if she were to win the leadership, would she call an election immediately? You'll have to watch the interview to see what she says about that. As always, we want to know what you think about what you're hearing on the show and what you're not hearing on the show as well. You can send us a note to talk@ryanjesperson.com. We wrap every week courtesy of our friends at the DQs in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road with a tradition where basically we pour gas on the fire. That's right. We turn it all the way up. We take a look into our inbox and see what Real Talkers' hottest takes are looking like over the past 7 days or so. These are all real emails. It's the Flamethrower, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Tracy writes in and says, Jess, in answer to your question about how I feel about this cougar hunt, I am very against the cougar hunt, particularly when they're hunting females. And I think that Minister Todd Loewen is the most self-serving SOB who is disregarding the science to help his outfitter friends. That's from Tracy, quick and to the point. What about this one from Jim, who says, Jespo, very interesting discussion on Real Talk, however brief, around the ideas of wildlife hunting, trophy hunting, culling animals, and the rest. The truth of the matter is indicated by the comments about human meddling with the environment, never getting it right. Isn't that the truth, Jim says, out of Vernon, BC. Says humanity's proven over and over again it cannot manage the environment effectively. Sure, we can extract resources and live comfortably off them for a certain duration, but at what cost to the environment, to the future environment for our children and for their children? When looked at honestly, the wildest and most dangerous animal on the planet is us, we the people, and our overall disregard not only for the environment and the grand interactions occurring within it all, but also our disregard for each other. Human beings, so-called sapiens, are probably the most effective killers on the planet, killers of the environment, of its inhabitants, and by examining our own history, the most effective killers of our own kind. Most of us are insulated by all this by our relatively comfortable lifestyles, our supposed disconnect from the ravages of nature. But regardless, we're still a part of it all, and pretty much the best ravagers on the planet. Nature's a cycle, checks and balances, and humans will eventually find out where and when they check out, as if anyone will be around to care when we become a non-entity in the future of nature. That from Jim in Vernon, BC. I felt like that needs its own segment right there. How about this one from Brent, who says, Jespo, a note to you with your constant coverage and all the Canadians that are spending so much energy hating on Donald Trump. He and his government do not give two shits what we as Canadians or what our useless federal government says about his actions. He's been America first since he came into politics, and what that means, he looks after the people that elected him first, not people from Canada or the UK or Australia or anywhere else. Brent says, I know this is going to be tough for some of you to hear, but complaining about it will not help. What will we do? Look after ourselves. That's it. Face off against China, Russia, whoever's deciding that Canada's the target. Instead of being lazy and trying to use the U.S.A. as our main trading partner, we've got to change our ideas here of resource development, of exports like LNG to Europe and Asia. Seems like a no-brainer, but with the Canadian government, not surprising. Fix this bullshit around interprovincial trade, some provinces denying the flow from one through another. And another thing, says Brent, quit thinking Canada's morally superior to the U.S. ran by that orange man. Our federal government has shown again and again that they hold no higher ground, in fact, constantly holding Canadians hostage for their own political game. fix these things, get stronger, fix our own house, make it Canada first, and only then will we be able to throw rocks at other houses. My thoughts, not yours. Signs off, Brent. How about this one from Garth? Says Henry Kissinger once said America has no friends, only interests. Well, Canada has certainly learned that the hard way. And we've learned something else. Canada has no friends either. When we needed support, not a single country stood up for us, not even one Democrat. But as old Jamaican parents would say, who can't hear will feel. This is a golden opportunity for Canada's next mandated Prime Minister to finally chart a course toward true sovereignty. It's time to put on our big boy pants and stand on our own 2 feet. Fast-track energy projects, implement a framework to accelerate pipelines and oil and gas development, establish clear, strict project criteria that, if met, guarantees approval, and declare these projects matters of national security. For 9 years, we've been led by a soft man-child, says Garth. For the last 2, the Liberal establishment working overtime to paint Poilievre as mean while pushing the idea that we need somebody soft like Trudeau. Look where that's gotten us. Trump has us bent over a barrel. That from Garth. And this one from Ronnie, who says, Jespo, the next time you speak to the Premier, ask her point blank, do you even want to be part of Canada? And don't let her slither out of it with political speak where she gives a non-answer. Hold her feet to the fire. I have a feeling she only has this rhetoric to stick it to Ottawa and appease her base because it's red meat. But 9 out of 10 Canadian premiers have expressed unity in countering the U.S. This is an existential threat to our sovereignty, and our national identity needs to be taken seriously, and premiers approaching this through policy of appeasement. Even the federal Liberal minister in charge of the issues at the border's not taking it seriously. For most of Canadian history, says Ronnie, we've been allies with some minor disputes here and there, but nothing that rose to the level of where it's at now. And maybe I'm being an alarmist, but I can't help but feel there's problematic overtures in a lot of Trump's speech on this issue. The Americans can't be trusted anymore, says Ronnie. They've forever altered the dynamic of a long-standing relationship that we have taken for granted. That from Ronnie, who writes into talk@ryanjesperson.com. The Flamethrower is proudly presented by the DQs in Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. When you swing on by to pick up a flamethrower, you make sure you let them know that Real Talk sent you. We're taking a few days off. We're back live on the 3rd of March. You won't want to miss that episode. In the meantime, catch up on highlights you may have missed on our YouTube channel. And of course, you can watch us on Spotify. Thanks, Real Talkers. We'll catch you again soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson. Executive producer Josh Dunford. Technical producer John Hicks. General manager Katie Cook-Chivers. Account coordinator Lawrence Derlego. Human resources Lena Shepard. Website design Mike Johnston. Voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.